Okay, again, just simplifying some expressions. Here are the basic variations on your Pythagorean identity, and there we go. So I actually started doing these out, and I forgot to tape it, so I'll just try to write it a little cleaner. To start off, we're going to look at this one. This one's going to be a basic identity. Cosine squared t minus 1. Let's just take a look. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. Cosine squared t minus 1 is negative sine squared theta. So this top thing becomes negative sine squared t all over. Now we're just going to do some math out. Cosine is obviously just what it is. So I get cosine squared t over 1 times tan. Tan is going to be what? I think it's sine over cosine, right? Okay, now we get this cancels out. We get this, and done. Negative 1 is the answer. Okay? Let's try something like this. I'll work through here for a second. We're simply going to multiply this out and see if we can find a cleaner result. Cosine, so we get cosine of t times secant. The secant's what? 1 over cosine, right? So that gives us 1. Done. Gives us 1. Minus. So I get cosine squared t. And again, another identity. Let's see if we can find it. I think it's right here. Yep, 1 minus cosine squared theta is sine squared theta. And we're done. That one's done too. Okay, let's try again. Looks to me like a very similar type problem. Let's try it. Cotan tan. Now I think you know this one, but let's just prove it real quick. So cotan is what? Cosine of t over sine of t, and tan is obviously sine of t over cosine of t. It cancels out to be 1. Now I have 1 plus cotan tan. Okay, so I have cotan cotan, which is cotan squared t. Let's see if that's an identity there, okay? 1 plus cotan squared t. Let's see here. Holy cow. 1 plus cotan squared, cosecant squared. And that is that easy. Okay, so you see it's not that bad once you start looking at it. So let's look at this one right here. Sorry. We have tan of t plus cotan of t. I'm going to find a common denominator, okay? So what's that, a cotan of t? Okay, ready? So tan is really defined as sine of t over cosine of t, right? Don't look at that for a minute. So sine over cosine, and cotan is what? Cosine over sine. So if we have sine, we need a common denominator. So I think it's going to be cosine of t, sine of t. This goes into this many times. Sine of t times sine of t is just sine squared t. Plus, sine goes into this amount. Let's see here. Cosine and cosine t times cosine t is cosine squared t. Now that's our original Pythagorean identity, right? That equals 1. So now I have 1 over cosine of t, sine of t, and all that's divided by cotangent of t. Well, cotangent of t, cotan is cosine sine, right? Cosine sine. So I'm just going to take the reciprocal, and I get sine of t over cosine of t, and it looks like these cancels right out. So I'm left with 1 over cosine squared t, and remember I can write that with my reciprocal as secant squared t, and done. Okay, got another one down here. Let's take a look here. Really the same thing, but we'll do it out just to make sure we're good. So I have tan. Well, I'm just going to write it right now. I'm going to write tan as what? Sine of t over cosine of t. Let's do the math out here. We need to find a common denominator, definitely. So tan again was what? Sine of t over cosine of t plus cotan, and I think that's what? Cosine over sine? Okay, and again, I know we just did it, but let's just take the minute to make sure it's solidified. So common denominator, cosine t sine of t. Cosine goes into that amount, sine t times. So I get sine squared t goes in, so I get cosine squared t. And what I have once again is 1. So now again, I have sine over t. I'm sorry, sine of t over cosine of t, all over 1 over cosine t sine t. Take the reciprocal, so now I'm multiplying by cosine t sine t over 1, boom, boom, and I get sine squared t, sine squared t. There's the answer we're looking for. And let's see what we got for the last one. No, I never did that one. Okay, so we have secant. Well, we know secant is really 1 over cosine. So I have 1 over cosine of t. Cotangent, we know, is cosine over sine. So when I do this out, boom, I get 1 over sine. So 1 over sine minus cotan cosine. So cotan we know as cosine of t over sine of t. And what's that? Cosine is cosine of t over 1. So I get cosine squared t over sine of t. And let's see, 1 minus cosine squared t. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, not there. 1 minus cosine squared t, sine squared of t, or theta. So now I have sine squared of t over, right, sine t. Well, if this really happened twice, you'd see very clearly that you just have sine of t, and you're done. Okay, good job.